In my opinion, there are 5 Cleveland Browns who need to step up their play in 2023 if this team can make the playoffs, if this team could possibly win the AFC North, if this team could possibly contend to play for the AFC in the Super Bowl in 2024. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Been here with Locked On Browns. This will be my 7th season of coverage through the misery of 2017, the highlights of what could be in 2018, the roller coaster of a playoff victory in 2020 in Pittsburgh. So for the last 6 years, I've been around, ain't going anywhere anytime soon. To all the everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. You guys, again, always the fabric on which this show and this network is built. My suggestion to anybody else as you're rolling through Locked On Browns, whether it's your first time or you just haven't yet, be more like the everydayers. Hit the subscribe button, notifications on, so when the content drops, you are all here to consume it. Thank you greatly. Today's episode, we are going to get to a few things. We're going to talk about, in my opinion, the 5 most important Cleveland Browns, some of them minor, some of them major, some of them maybe in roles that we're not familiar with, but the 5 most important Cleveland Browns to overall team success in 2023. Segment 3, we will close it out with the big guy, because I don't think so much that it's a question whether or not he's going to be a rebound. But after what we saw last season and the long layoff, we're going to need to see it. Segment 2, we're going to get to 2 guys on the defensive side of the ball, a third-year player, a second-year player, and some interesting roles and thoughts with those 2 players. Kicking it off all here, the offensive side of the ball. And obviously the conversations all offseason were long. And, just long discussions on will they or won't they, should they or shouldn't they, and picking up Jedrick Wills' 5th-year option as he goes now into year 4 for the Cleveland Browns, 2023, his 4th season as left tackle for the Cleveland Browns. Look, the Browns need this to start panning out. And it's not that, you spend a first-round pick. Jedrick Wills has been the starting left tackle his entire career here. But we're still at a point where we don't know if Jedrick Wills is just a middle-of-the-road left tackle, or can Jedrick Wills be what the Cleveland Browns brass thought he would be when they made him a number 10 overall selection back in the spring of 2020. There are 2 young tackles here in James Hudson, in rookie Jawan Jones. These guys are going to get the opportunity to develop. These guys are hopefully going to be part of changing in the salary structure for this team as the future goes, as players start to make more and more. You're going to have to pick and choose some players who are going to stay as opposed to some players who will not be around. So Jedrick Wills needs to take this next step. There's times where we get excited about Jedrick Wills, and 2, I will defend Jedrick Wills in this respect. It's not that he's been severely injured. There have been a lot of dings, a lot of bumps, a lot of bruises. And to Jedrick Wills' credit, he's been able to play through these things. But again, that's not always going to give everybody the warm and fuzzies. If you're out there, they expect you to perform at the best level you possibly can. So I still think we have not seen the best of Jedrick Wills at the left tackle position, but I still honestly believe there is more to Jedrick Wills. The question now, year 4, playing under an offensive line coach with the talent, with the experience, with the track record of Bill Callahan, it is imperative that Jedrick Wills takes this next step. And the reason I put it kind of here on Jedrick Wills is the Cincinnati Bengals right now are currently in a situation with Jonah Williams as he's going to his 5th year. The Bengals picked up the 5th-year option. Jonah Williams went out in his 4th year, did not basically solidify what they hoped they were going to get when they picked up that 5th-year option. Now he's kind of in limbo. The most thought process is he's going to be the right tackle for that team while making $14 million. They brought in a left tackle to basically take his job. So it creates for an awkward situation for the Cincinnati Bengals as Jonah Williams was given this money to play a certain position, which he is no longer going to play. This could be something the Browns, I'm sure they are, keeping their eyes on the situation in Cincinnati, because this is a situation themselves that they could be faced with and be looking at 1 year from now as the 2023 season comes to a close, whenever it comes late in February, possibly in 2024 would be the best time for it. But the Browns need Jedrick Wills to basically back the faith that they have in him by picking up this 5th-year option, by putting together a hell of a year in year 4 and growing not only in the run game, growing in the pass game, and being able to show a guy who never basically hits that pause button that we've talked about with Jedrick Wills. It's got to be 100% of the time for him to hopefully achieve the levels that the Browns thought he could achieve when they drafted him in 2020. Second player on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, second year player, running back Jerome Ford. And look, this could obviously change. Certainly there is a heavy amount of veteran running back stock to be had if the Browns wanted to go this route. They haven't yet to this point. Do they bring somebody in before camp? Do they give Jerome Ford a chance to start camp as the number 2 back? And if he doesn't necessarily show the progress that they are hoping for, because keep in mind, you are literally 1 snap away from Jerome Ford right now being the running back number 1 for this team. If Nick obviously plays the entire season, can we show and find a role where Jerome Ford can give you 100 to 130 touches? You got to figure receiving is going to, be a part of this as well. What we did get to see at Jerome Ford last year in the preseason, we saw a guy with the ability to contribute in the passing game as well as the running game. I will still go back to the work Jerome Ford did as a kick returner last year. Is it enough to tell you the tale on whether or not he is ready to be the number 2 running back? Probably not. But it shows that effort was put in, hard work was put in, attention to detail, and Jerome found a way to be a pretty solid contributor as a kick returner for the Browns last year. Now, also, can he show enough here early in training camp that the Browns maybe don't stoke the fires on a veteran running back? Does Demetric Felton show enough as a receiving back that maybe you can say, all right, I think maybe we got enough here behind Nick. And if we got to change course and we got to address this later on, we have the opportunity to do so. But for Jerome Ford, there's a big opportunity right here. There really is a big opportunity. We know the offensive system. We know how great the offensive line is. But we're talking about a guy here, again, 1 snap away from being the Cleveland Browns starting running back, who only had 8 carries in his rookie season. There is no way to determine whether you're a big fan or you're not a fan. 8 carries is not going to sway the vote either way. We're not sure what Jerome Ford is yet, but it's going to be fun this summer to see what Jerome Ford possibly could be. I am Jeff Lloyd, host of the Locked On Browns podcast. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Make your way on over to FanDuel right now. New customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Look, FanDuel, the site is simple, it's safe, and it's secure. It's easy to navigate. They have great promotions every day. You get your money instantly. Look, if you're out of the NBA because the NBA season is over, hey, man, it is not too early for NFL overs and unders. Go ahead, check out FanDuel. Get some wagers down. Some of these look really choice right now, and these odds could sway here on these bets as we get closer and closer to training camp. So why don't you go ahead and get those locked in. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, here at Locked On Browns. Appreciate all the traffic that's been coming, whether it was through the draft, whether it's the Darius Smith trade. My suggestion is jump into the group of the everydayers and make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Best way to do that is by being subscribed to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Notifications on, and Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your audio podcasts. I don't know if you guys saw in the recent days, obviously we're getting a lot of outlets changing up the way they do coverage. A lot of them are starting to go away from daily coverage of some of your favorite professional sports program teams. Well, this is exactly what Locked On is built on. And Locked On Browns will be here every single day. I promise you that. And we will bust our butts to give you the best Cleveland Browns coverage we possibly can. Segment 2 here. And again, we're talking about players that, in my opinion, are really going to need to step up here in 2023 for the Cleveland Browns to reach the heights that we all think they can. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You go back to the 2021 NFL draft. Obviously, JOK, the Cleveland Browns, traded up. Now, this is a team, and they've never, in the Andrew Berry era, ever been significant players as far as what they're going to spend or what type of capital they're going to use on the linebacker position. JOK, granted, he's making decent money as a second-round pick. He was probably the most significant move made capital-wise for the Cleveland Browns at the linebacker position during the Andrew Berry regime. They traded up into the 50s with the Carolina Panthers at the time to make this move. They understood, and obviously from the tape at Notre Dame, the type of player he was at Notre Dame, he was basically an all-around the line of scrimmage type of guy. He'd drop in coverage from time to time, not really deep coverage. But the Browns thought that they had this guy who could come in as an athletic linebacker and be one of these guys, and I want to compare him to Roquan Smith, but be a guy, that type of player. Maybe not Roquan Smith, but Roquan Smith light, if you catch what I'm saying. There's been flashes, absolutely have been flashes from Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think one of the biggest things that's been difficult for JOK has been the time missed. Both his years in the NFL right now, he has been on a pace of being 100+ tackle guy per year. You don't reach those numbers when obviously you don't play in all the games. You look at the linebacker room the way it is right now. Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki, both gentlemen brought back to Cleveland for this year. Sione Takitaki coming off the ACL injury, which was a really, really tough blow because Sione Takitaki was probably the best linebacker for the Cleveland Browns last year. Anthony Walker, in his 2 years here, everything we've heard about Anthony Walker, we heard it when he came over from the Colts, the type of locker room presence he is, the type of veteran he is, the type of mentor he is. We've seen that, all that and then some. And we've seen a really, really solid player for the Cleveland Browns here at the linebacker position. The injury suffered last year was a tough one. It's a difficult injury. You add that in, that Anthony's starting to get about that age where you wonder if he still possesses all the athleticism that he once had when he came into the league. And Anthony wasn't an uber athlete. He was a guy who was a good athlete, but had superior intelligence at the linebacker position. So now it's a question of, does that get passed on? Does Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah start to become the guy who is now picking up the NFL intelligence at the linebacker position, joined with the athleticism? It's there for JOK. The design should be for this to be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's linebacker room. It's year 3. It's not an unreal expectation. It's not an unfair expectation for a former second round pick who the Browns traded up to get. Obviously, they had a lot of feelings about the type of player this guy could be. He is now going to a new defensive coordinator who basically needs a linebacker who could basically play seek and destroy. We've heard Jim Schwartz talking about wanting to play 5 defensive linemen. Possibility of rushing 5, possibility of bringing 4, dropping someone into a zone, all that types of stuff, which means you're going to play dime with that, and you're going to play 1 linebacker, ideally. And it'll be it'll be an injustice if it doesn't turn out to be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He should fit this like a fish to water. He is a sideline to sideline guy. He's aggressive, sees ball carrier, drops ball carrier. This should be the year where it all comes together for a player like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. As much as I am a Jacob Phillips guy, I'm talking here now about JOK and the time he's missed with injuries. Jacob Phillips' time away is 5 times as longer. Tony Fields could be a guy here. He could, but this would be a spot where if Tony Fields gets playing time, it'll most likely because we're not getting what we expect from JOK. It's his time. And there is going to be a lot of guys in front of him. There's going to be improvement in front of him where he should be able to play clean. And by clean, not having to disengage from blockers, not having to deal with blockers, basically find ball, see ball, put ball carrier on the ground. Number 28, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. This is his year. There's been some rumors here how real they are. I've reached out to a couple people. I do not believe, and it does not sound like from what I've heard, that the Browns are in the Yannick Ngakoue business. I was a huge Yannick Ngakoue fan when he was coming out of Maryland years ago. I don't think he is the player he used to be. I do believe the bloom is off the rose, so to speak, in that respect. But you're bringing in a player now who just hired Drew Rosenhaus, which automatically means that, there's going to be money involved, obviously. And we're talking right now, the Browns with Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, Ogbonnia-Okoronkwo. There's 3 DNs. Now, 4th, you just drafted Elijah McGuire. 5th, you drafted Alex Wright last spring. 6th, you just drafted Isaiah Thomas last spring. I'm not saying any one of these guys is necessarily 4th, 5th, or 6th right now, but you have 2 second-year players, and you have a rookie that you invested in and are players that you liked. We're going to go with Alex Wright here. And I think the reason Alex Wright is in for a pretty substantial production jump in 2023 is I think Alex Wright is going to be a player that's going to play a lot on the inside and passing downs. The size, the length, the wingspan. I believe his best chance at opportunities to rush the passer and get on the field will be playing at an interior pass rushing spot in nickel and dime situations. The Browns, Myles Garrett, look, you can do whatever you want with him, and you want to take the opportunity to find Myles Garrett to basically have the path to least resisted. As we used to say all the time with Pete Smith, you're basically doing who is the biggest turd, let Myles line up on him, eat, and then hope everybody else is following in suit as you get into the backfield after the quarterback. So with Wright, I think the opportunity is there. And I think the Browns were smart with this. What they felt they didn't see from Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas last year, they're giving them an opportunity where their roles will be smaller. Can their roles increase if they produce? Absolutely. And we've talked about Jim Schwartz and how much he wants to play 5D linemen. Well, the best way to do that, and the only way to do that, is by subbing guys in and out. Otherwise, guys by the late third quarter are going to be gassed. And if it's a close game, it could come to the point where it's going to cost Browns games. So you want to be able to sub these guys in and out. But I think Alex Wright's size, his length, his height, and one thing we did see from Alex Wright last year was ability to get his hands in the air if he wasn't able to create a pressure himself. So I think Alex Wright, even though his snaps may be the same as last year, perhaps even a tad bit reduced, but I think there is potential there for Alex Wright to improve his production greatly in 2023 as he gets a little bit more comfortable with himself and is surrounded by guys who know what to do, know how to win in the NFL as pass rushers. And I think if the young man is just able to sponge it and absorb what's going on around him, it should be a great, great opportunity for Alex Wright to improve himself in the 2023 season. There is one player and one player only that the Browns 2023 season hinges on, and probably all of our opinions. And we're going to get some thoughts on him here in just 1 second. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. To the everydayers, the YouTube everydayers, we love you. We got to find a way to make some shirts or something made up for all you guys. You're all the best, no doubts about it. It's all the new traffic that's been coming through here. Best thing I can do is tell you to be more like the everydayers. And the best way to do that is to subscribe to the YouTube channel, notifications on. So when the content drops, you are all there to absorb it. Audio-wise, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. You look at the state of the AFC right now. The Buffalo Bills in their quarterback, the Miami Dolphins in their quarterback. You go out to the AFC West quarterbacks everywhere. Mahomes, Herbert, Russell Wilson. AFC South, Trevor Lawrence coming on fast. 2 rookies in the AFC South who look like they were really, really solid players down the road. You get to the AFC North, you've got Joe Burrow who's established himself. You've got Lamar Jackson. We all know what goes on there. Kenny Pickett, we'll see what comes to that. But Deshaun Watson, when the Browns made this acquisition on March 17th of 2022, handing him a guaranteed contract of $232 million. The Browns, understanding all the off-field warts that Watson was dealing with at the time, but they felt this was just an absolute situation where they can get a quarterback, and certainly nobody has had the talent that he has had since the Barry regime has been here. I'll tell you right now, in the 7 years I've covered this team, nobody has the talent. I don't believe there is a more overall talented quarterback that's ever worn a Cleveland Browns jersey ever than Deshaun Watson. You have made several attempts to make this investment work. You kept together a very good offensive line, probably paying more to your offensive line than you wanted to do. You brought back Ethan Posick. You extended Jack Conklin. You picked up Jedrick Wills, 5th-year option, whether he's earned it or not. These are commitments you made. Why? Because you're trying to protect your $232 million investment. What else did you do here? Well, let's see. After acquiring Amari Cooper last year and drafting rookie wide receivers last year, obviously some of those did not pan out. We'll still see with David Bell the way that works out. What did you do this offseason? Well, let's see. Elijah Moore is available. We can maybe get a pick swap here and get a player of Elijah Moore's ability. And you've already seen it. You already heard him talk about it. You already heard the coaches talk about it. He can line up anywhere. He can do anything. And we're talking about a guy who has 4.3 speed. You can always find a home for a player like that. You go out, you draft Cedric Tillman. First thing Cedric Tillman brings you here is a contested catch guy. Automatically comes in as the biggest wide receiver in the room. So boom, another way to, obviously make sure your $232 million investment works. Marquise Goodwin out there, obviously same agent in David Mulugheta as Deshaun Watson. I'm sure David was hoping to find a way to make this pairing work. Maybe, the opportunity could be for Marquise Goodwin to give you some Will Fuller type of, return, some things that Will Fuller was able to do in his time with Deshaun Watson back in the day. All of this with Amari Cooper. All of this with Donovan Peoples-Jones, who in year 3 showed great improvement. Here's a guy who's put in every drop of work that's asked of him, and you've seen the dividends come from the effort and the work that Donovan Peoples-Jones has put in. David Njoku. Obviously, they put big money into David Njoku, and I know there's some that are still not thrilled with the money, but I will tell you right now, you take last year and take his output and his production and put it based on 17 games, and I think the money starts to make a little bit more sense for what David Njoku makes. Now, you bring in, obviously, Jordan Akins, obviously a tight end that has familiar ties to Deshaun Watson, has, played and succeeded with Deshaun Watson. A lot of people felt Harrison Bryant was maybe one of the odd men looking in for this year. You rectified that. You paid him. You got the contract right. Harrison Bryant has a chance. And this is the thing. Harrison Bryant, he may not be able to do much for you as a tight end. Much else for you, I should say. He's a receiver. He can line up as a wide receiver. He has always been successful as a receiver for this team. Granted, when he started here, he was much higher in the pecking order as to where he is now. But if he is on the field, he's most likely going to be the 5th responsibility for a defense. And there are a lot of players in this league he can beat, and he is savvy enough to know how to get open. He is a nice weapon to have, albeit he won't be a major weapon. Running back room, Nick Chubb is going to be involved more as a receiver this year here in 2023, probably more so than we've seen. Again, that could change if they bring somebody in, but you probably think Nick Chubb is going to be more involved as a receiver than we have ever seen him in his time here with the Browns. That leads to, well, who else is going to help out in the running back room? For now, Jerome Ford, like I said, you're thinking maybe anywhere 130, 150 touches here in year 2. He's going to have to step up. He's going to have to be a part of this offense. Again, this can change, but Jerome Ford, the Browns didn't draft him, 2 years ago with the thought process of, he'll be out of town in 2 years. Obviously, they drafted him with a thought process of he will be a contributor for this team one day. We've seen it as a kick returner. Obviously, now we need to see it more as a running back. We certainly need to see it more as a receiver. And that's only 2. We still don't know where to go with the rest of that room, which certainly brings up the questions that everybody wants to bring up about bringing a veteran in here. And I am not going to rule it out. And I'm going to go on record as saying I'm not against it. But until that guy comes in, obviously we got nothing to talk about, to be honest with you, because it's all just speculation. But if you go back and look, there's been times where Jedrick Felton has had a role as a receiver for this team. And I think he can still do that for this team. We're talking about a guy who was a wide receiver and a running back in his time at UCLA. So for Jedrick Felton right now, there could be a possibility here for Jedrick Felton where he has maybe a more defined role at this point in 2023 than he did at this point for 2022. You look around, obviously, Dearness Johnson is no longer with this team. Kareem Hunt is no longer with this team. That veteran running back that we all think is coming is not here yet. So until said player gets here, these guys have an opportunity to prove themselves, which shows you the offensive line is intact for Deshaun Watson. This offensive line is one of the top 3 in the NFL. This wide receiver room jumps very much in the rankings once you add an Elijah Moore to this room. We'll see what you can get from the other guys, but Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, if it's, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1A, 1B, 2A, I don't care how you stack the 3 of them, but it is a really, really nice room. And it's diverse, and they all can do some different things. And the chance for those guys to succeed, in my opinion, is just there. You've got tight ends. You've got a running game. We think the defense is going to be vastly improved. This entire season, 2023, and hopefully leading into early 2024, is based on number 4. It's Deshaun Watson. Can he return to top 5 quarterback play? Can he even return to top 7, top 8, top 10? Deshaun Watson returns to the player we all think he is. And I think everybody still thinks that ability is in there. The Cleveland Browns should go far in the 2023 season and play well into 2024. It's on Deshaun. It's on number 4. I am Jeff Lloyd at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Been the host here of Locked On Browns, now my 7th season of Browns coverage. We've seen some ugly. We've seen some pretty good. We've seen some really good and kind of back to ugly again. So we'll see where the merry-go-round takes us here in the 2023 season. Appreciate all of the everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. My suggestion, get in the group, become an everydayer. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube page. You have the notifications on. Audio-wise, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go, Browns.